My name is Nolan Brills, and I'm a teacher's retirement system. This is Lexi Newcomer. She's our communications specialist with teacher's retirement system. I'm the accounting fiscal manager, so I take most of the calls that come in from employers, me, Christian Ward, or Allie Holland. So you've probably spoken with one of us or all of us at one point or another if you've been doing your position for a while. So sounds like we have one new clerk. Is there any other new business managers, clerks, whatever? So we're just going to kind of talk about teachers' retirement system today. Some of it, if you've been to this presentation before, it may be a review for you. If you're brand new, then hopefully you get something out of it. There is always some new stuff happening at TRS, and we'll talk about some of that stuff. So, but really the agenda, we'll talk about the reportable positions, the mandatory participation requirements and working retiree requirements. We'll briefly discuss monthly reporting, and certainly the non-contributing reporting deadlines. Some of the automated emails that you'll be getting here shortly in the next month or so. But if anybody ever has a question, just definitely holler. Can everybody hear me just fine in the back? I'll try to talk loud. I don't want to use a microphone. So teachers' retirement system started in 1937. And it's a defined benefit plan, which is different than a defined contribution plan. Most private employers have like a 401k where employees participate in those 401ks, and it may have $500,000 or $600,000 in it at the end of their career, and once they spend that money or use that up or withdraw all that money, they don't have anything else. So in a defined benefit plan, you actually get a set amount for the rest of your life, sort of like Social Security, and it's based on your highest average final compensation and your years of service, basically. So people with more years of service have a higher benefit payment, and people with that had higher pay throughout their career obviously have higher benefit payments also. So we have about $5.4 billion in assets managed by the Board of Investments, and that was as of June 30th of 2025. So the market's been doing really well this year, so I'm sure that's more like 5.7 or 5.8 billion by now. And we have about 20,000 full and part-time active TRS members. We have several thousand more inactive members, and we pay about $460 million in benefit payments to about 18,000, a little over 18,000 retirees each year. So. Our employers are obviously mostly public school districts in Montana. There are, the state of Montana has positions that are reportable to TRS, and obviously the school for the deaf and blind, the university system. But really, it's like any political subdivision, even like counties. That have TRS reportable positions. So, employer responsibilities. So really, the main responsibility is to pick up those contributions from your members or from your TRS people that work at your school district. You should inform the person who is required to be a TRS member of their rights and responsibilities related to TRS, and really all that means is giving them the handout for TRS new hires. So we have that on our website under our new hire. We have a new hire checklist for employers, and then we have a handout, and then there's always the Form 106 for all of your substitutes, part-time paraprofessionals and part-time teachers' aides that are new, of course. So, and then obviously you need to report those to TRS, and you notify TRS of the employment of a person eligible for membership, and you notify us basically by reporting those people. Our information is really only as good as what schools provide to TRS, so report the name, social security number, hours worked, and gross earnings for each TRS member. And if you employ any retired TRS member, now this one's kind of, I get this question all the time, or confusion all the time from school business managers. Someone will tell you that they're retired. We only consider them retired if they're actually receiving a benefit from teachers' retirement system. So they might think they're retired, but that doesn't mean they're retired through TRS. So you definitely want to check those people in the member search edit and make sure that they actually, it says retired in our system. So, but if you do have TRS retirees, then you definitely want to comply with all of the working retiree requirements, not just for you and the school, but for that member. If they're not complying, that if they go over their earnings limit, then they may have to actually repay all of their benefit payments that they've been receiving, and it turns into a mess. So hopefully everyone is receiving, we do send out notifications by email, so please make sure your contact information is updated. That's one of the menu items when you log into TRS. It's contact information, so just check that and make sure, especially if your email has been updated or your phone number or anything. So yeah, keep that contact information updated with TRS and read all of our memos and notices. Certainly good to check the website once in a while. All communications are posted on the website. So who, as far as TRS members, who's required to be a TRS member? Obviously the easy ones are, teachers and principals and administrative staff. But if you ever have a position that you're not sure about, then that's something that you can contact TRS about. We may actually, if it's not, black and white, then you'll want to, you'll probably want to send the position description, and we'll make an official determination. But most positions at your school are going to be pretty straightforward. It's really anyone that works in an educational service capacity at your school, such as librarians, coaches, athletic directors, substitutes, part-time teachers' aides, and paraprofessionals are also TRS reportable. They just have that 210-hour threshold. But that 210-hour threshold only really applies to substitutes, part-time paras, and part-time teachers' aides, and we'll talk a little bit about that later in the. So some of the members that are some of the people at your school that are not included would be, like yourselves. So really any non-instructional IT staff that you have, the people that work on your computers like in your office and stuff, cafeteria staff, custodial staff, bus drivers, and then anybody that really falls under this 200, so if you do that stipend calculation, which we will talk about later, the coaching stipends and stuff, if you have people from your community that coach, chances are their coaching stipend doesn't reach that 210-hour threshold unless they're coaching multiple sports, and then you'd actually have to add up all those stipends, and but we will talk about that a little bit later. So which subs, part-time teachers' aides, and part-time pairs must participate from their first day. It's really, if they are already a TRS member who has an account balance with us, then they must participate in TRS. So this is where we're going to talk about the what about those who only do stipend work. So obviously I mainly talk about coaching stipends, but there are other stipends. You might have an accompanist, or like, I don't know, just random stipends at your school. And if you have people like that are members of the community doing that work, obviously if they have already ever been reported to TRS, you'd want to check that first and see if they're a TRS member. Then that stipend work has to be reportable to TRS. But if they're not, then you do the stipend calculation. And so you would go find the fact sheet that's calculating and reporting extra duty service credit, and that explains how to do that. And if you want the actual, I do have like a spreadsheet template that would work for your school, because it's kind of based on the first-time teacher at your school, like the starting salary of a first-time teacher at your school. That's how the calculation works to come up with the hours for those stipends. So we all know that anybody who assistant coaches probably actually spends more than 210 hours in a season with their team, but that's not, we can't do it that way, because they'd be making $3 or $4 an hour, so yeah, we definitely, that's relatively new at TRS. So if you have never done that stipend calculation, or you need to see that stipend calculation, let me know. Anybody who's a full-time teacher that also coaches, then all you do is report the stipend. You don't really need to calculate their service credit, because they already get 1 year of service credit for being a full-time teacher. But anybody who's part-time or hourly person at your school that also coaches or does a stipend work, then that's when you would need to do that stipend calculation. Or if you have people that are not TRS members that are doing multiple coaching stipends, you'd want to do that stipend calculation. So, and if you ever need any help, just call us at TRS. So one of the things that kind of came up recently is, this was passed in the last legislative session, but extra duty service credit that falls outside of, school district's regular activities, basically, and is not reportable to TRS on its own, must be reported when it's assigned to like a teacher, a teacher's aide, paraprofessional, or administrator for purposes of student supervision. So what that means is, we used to not have people, if you were a teacher and you also did like lunch duty, that lunch duty was not reportable to TRS. Well, now it is. Unless there's a big caveat there, if you've been reporting it to PERS for many years, then you can keep reporting it to PERS. But if you've never reported it to either TRS or PERS, you would start reporting it to TRS. So I don't know if anybody has those situations, but it's usually like if you're assigning lunch duty, cross guard duty, playground aid duties, those types of things to your teachers, and they're getting any money for that, then that can now be reportable to TRS. We do have a very handy, especially for those of you that are relatively new, but even if you haven't been doing this and you've been in your position for a long time, it's always good to check out the new hire procedure on our website. It's for employers like yourselves, and then it also has the new hire handout as right there next to it. So if you do follow the procedure and you find you have new people that are going to be brand new to TRS, you can hand that off. But basically, The procedure is to, you know, check and make sure that those people, like especially if it's not a full-time, if you know you have like a brand new full-time teacher, obviously they're going to be TRS. There's, you know, you don't have to do anything, just give them the new hire handout. But for those people that are less than full-time or like part-time paraprofessionals, part-time teachers' aides, you'll want to check them in our system to see if they've ever been reported by another school in Montana, and kind of follow that procedure, and it should cover your bases in 90% of situations, so, or more than 90, probably like 95% of situations. So, and then on our website, in the fact sheets, you'll see that. Did I kick something?
Oh no, I think it was. Let's see. Come on, there we go.
Okay. Cool. All right. Moving on. So what, as far as like what is reportable to TRS, obviously you're going to report the wages, the service, and the contributions. When we talk about wages, what we mean, there is a, you know, a very lawyer obviously wrote this, but it's remuneration paid for the services of a member out of funds controlled by an employer before any pre-tax deductions allowed under the IRS. So it's basically gross pay. So, but it does not include like the direct premium payments. If you're paying premiums for health insurance, obviously that's not considered earned compensation. If your school does, like, you pay some people's insurance, but some people choose to get cash in lieu of insurance, that is not included in earned compensation. And then anytime you're paying people for like cell phones, lodging, any maintenance, you know, housing, any of that stuff, that is not also not included in earned compensation. But if you have any weird situations, probably best to clarify whether that's reportable or not to TRS. So, and you can certainly call me. So, as far as contribution rates, they're staying the same again for this year. There was legislation passed in the last legislative session that will increase the employer contribution rate by 0.1% for 20 years. So it starts July 1st of 2027, so in the 2028 fiscal year, it'll go up by 0.1%. But for this year, the employer contribution rates are 9.47 and 11.85. So July, not this coming July 1st, but July 1st of next year, those will go up to, you know, 9.57 and 11.95%, and they'll continue to go up by 0.1% every year for 20 years.
Is that just the employer, or is that employer?
Just the employer contribution rate, yep. And as far as employee contribution rates, there's really two tiers of members with TRS. There's Tier 1 members that started or became members before July 1st of 2013. And then there's Tier 2 members that became members after July 1st of 2013. And the big difference for you guys to know is that, you know, that there could at some point, if we were like fully funded or funded at like 90%, I think it is, that those rates could be different. You know, like a Tier 1 member may actually have a lower contribution rate, or a Tier 2 member might have a higher contribution rate. So, but for the foreseeable future, you can pretty much 8.15%, and then obviously if that were to ever change, you would get lots of communication about that from TRS. So 8.15% is going to be, you know, at least for the next several fiscal years, and you know, we don't anticipate being 90% funded anytime in the near future. So when it comes to actually reporting to teachers' retirement system, when you log in, first of all, you have to get logged in. Hopefully everybody can. But if you can't, really each employer has like an online administrator, and there's only one allowed like per employer. So usually that should probably be the person that logs into TRS and does the reporting every month, because if you have somebody like above you and you're the one doing the reporting, that person has to log in like every 90 days, or else you as the additional user will lose access also. So best practice is probably to have whoever does the, logs in every month and does the reporting be the online administrator. But once you log in, this is the screen that you'll see. So on the left there's the tabs. We do have like action items, and that's for like people. Right now we're only using it for people that are like withdrawing from TRS. And so if you have somebody that left your school district and they're withdrawing, you do need to verify their final date of employment and their final contributions, and what TRS report those final contributions will be on. We can't process someone's withdrawal until we receive all their final contributions from the school district. So, but the main, stay on here for a sec. The main one that you guys are going to be working in is the employer reports tab. That's where you see all of your reports for the fiscal year. You can use these radio buttons to change between calendar year, fiscal year. You can do the drop down box and go back to any previous year, all the way back to like 1994 or something. So hopefully way further back than you'll ever need to go. So yeah, that's this is where you'll spend most of your time, and if you have any questions, let me know. The member history is really helpful if you ever run into like, well, did all of this member's wages and contributions get reported to TRS? You can search them up in the member history as long as they're your employee. You can't do it for anyone's employee, but if it's your employee, then you can look at their history with TRS, and you can compare that to your payroll software reports and make sure that everything's being reported correctly. Member search edit is where you'll edit any information that you need to on a member. Some things you will not be able to edit, so just keep that in mind. But obviously like phone numbers and addresses and things can be updated there. That's also where you would go, like if you have a brand new person and they say, oh, I did some substituting in Missoula or whatever, and they don't know if that's where you go to check if they're have ever been reported to TRS, based on their status. Upload report. Hopefully, is anybody not uploading their report? Or does everyone upload? Does anybody not do that anymore? Okay, cool. So this is, obviously you'll all use this upload report then. Hopefully you get like, out of your payroll software, you're getting an upload report that you can just pop right in, and that's where you do that, is under the upload report. This came up yesterday, actually. We had a district call and say, well, I have this report out there that I uploaded, but it was wrong. I need to upload, and we corrected it. You can always, like, in that upload report screen, you can do like an override. So you can, like, if you uploaded the wrong report, it doesn't look right or whatever, you can delete it and re-upload a new one, or you can just override it with that in that upload report screen. So. Term pay calculator, if you've ever had anybody retiring through TRS, I would say the majority of them will do like a term pay buyback. And what that is basically with their accumulated sick and vacation leave that they have, or any retirement incentives that your school offers, they can choose to kind of invest that into TRS and increase their average final compensation, which increases their benefit payment for the rest of their life. And it's a really good deal for teachers, so most people choose to do that now. So that's where that term pay calculator is what you would be using. You know, you'd put in that sick and vacation leave and along with any retirement incentives, and you would calculate the term pay buyback amounts that are due from the employee and employer. So, any questions so far? The employer balance screen you probably won't use very often, but if you do have like Christian, especially Christian Ward, if you've ever received like an email from him, he usually sends out an email at least once a month that says like, hey, you have like an overage or a shortage or a bet, you know, which is basically like your school has a credit balance with TRS or a balance due. This is the screen that you could go to. That employer balance screen will show you all the reports that added up to that, you know, overage. Hopefully it's only one report, you know, hopefully you click on that screen and you see like, oh, I have an overage or a shortage from this one report, but we do have like habitual offenders that it's like, yeah, this stretches back like 10 or 12 reports, so we need to get this balance cleaned up. And we try to get those cleaned up as soon as possible, so. And then this is, like I was talking earlier, make sure your contact info is up to date. That's where you can check your contact info with TRS. And then that reporting tab, there's pretty neat little reports in there, especially for like fiscal year end, if you want to, you know, make sure that you can see like the detail per member, like of all the wages and contributions that were reported to TRS. So if you ever want to like make sure that, hey, this is what everyone was paid, what was reported to TRS, make sure that those are adding up. Okay. All right. And then the additional users tab, if you are the online administrator and you want anyone else at your school to have access to TRS, that's where you can do it. They do have to create a username and password on our like employer wage and contribution system. And then all you need is their username, and then you can add read-only access or read-write access. So if you have like auditors that you only want to be able to like see the information and not do anything, you could add you know, a read-only access for them, whatever. And then we do have some people that do multiple schools. I don't know. Does anybody in here do multiple schools? No. If you did have multiple schools that you report for, you can change, you know, you only have to have one login and you can change between employers. That's that last tab. So that's really it on the monthly reporting. So when you do a report, the, you know, standard process is that you would, you know, upload the report, run the employer, you know, edit. You go into the report summary, run report. You can go to your member list. That's the easiest way. I mean, obviously you can look at that PDF that comes up if you want, but I just click back in and go to the member list, and then it'll have like a little red X or a yellow triangle that says like those are your warnings. Warnings will not prevent you from submitting to TRS, but errors will. You cannot submit until you fix all your errors. But then once you fix everything, or you know, like it doesn't automatically get rid of the errors. You have to fix all your errors, then run report again to edit check that, and then all your errors will go away. And then, you know, once you have no errors, obviously you still have to submit. I get that at least once or twice a month, every month, that somebody, oh, I did everything, I just forgot to hit submit. So you do have to hit submit at the end. So reporting deadlines for TRS, obviously the 15th of the following month is the reporting deadline generally, and you will receive like an email from me, you know, just reminding you that, hey, your report's late, and then you might get another reminder, and then I start calling hopefully none of you get in the situation where I start calling like the superintendent and start sending letters to like the county attorney. So those are really egregious situations, but yeah, the 15th of the following month. So if we're talking about like the May report, that's due by June 15th. But the main deadline is obviously we have to close out our fiscal year, so the June report, or basically all of fiscal year 2026 reports are due by July 15th. So if you have anything that you need to get into TRS and submit, that is due by July 15th. And that's a pretty hard deadline. If you miss that deadline and it gets to July 18th, July 19th, pretty soon we close our fiscal year, and then that can really screw up like your net pension liability, some numbers for you, because you can no longer do previous year reports. I mean, we can do adjustments and fix some things, but it'll never be in that previous fiscal year as far as the auditors and things are concerned. Can you go back one screen? I just want to make sure I didn't miss anything. Oh, your insurance deduction reporting. Oh, I should say, some schools don't have anything to report for June, and that's okay. You do have to do a $0 report. So if you don't know how to do that, let me know, but it's pretty straightforward. You click on the add report. There's a little radio button that says, is this a $0 report? You hit yes. You save, and then once you go in and hit submit, it'll just like post that report automatically because there's nothing really to edit yet. Insurance deduction, if you have people that have retired from your school district that are still on your insurance, TRS does offer, where we will withhold the insurance premiums from their benefit payment and send those to the school. Some of you may not have this, so don't worry about it if you do. But if you do have that and there are insurance premium changes, those need to be into us by the 15th. Yeah, is it the 5th? No, no later than the 16th, sorry, of the prior month. So if they're changing July 1st of 2026, they need to be in by 2 days ago. Okay, so just some reminders for accurate reporting to TRS. You should be reporting to TRS on a when-earned basis. So I know this trips some people up, and if you have questions about your specific situation and payroll, in a perfect world, all school districts in Montana would be required to pay their employees in one way, so that we could all get on the same page, but that's not the way it is. So you might have to call me and see like what your situation is, but really you should be reporting all wages and contributions earned for like May on the 05-2026 TRS report, and that should happen probably sometime in early June. So whether that's happening or not, you can let me know if you have questions about that. But all full-time, as far as TRS is concerned, I do get this from a lot of schools, like, well, this person that is paid by the hour, they work 40 hours a week, so they're full, and it's like, I understand, like, by your sense of the term, they are full-time, but if they're paid by the hour, they should be reported to TRS as hourly. And then, our system will still give them a full year of service credit if they work. It's really if they work over 140 hours in a month, then they're full-time, even as an hourly person, and they get a full year of service credit if they do that for 9 months, But just for the way the system works, it should be reported that way. Go ahead.
So what if we find, I took over for the previous clerk about 2 years ago. What if we find in the system that there's a lot of hourly employees in our system that are reported as full-time? Do you just want me to go in and change them?
Yep, go ahead and change them now, and then everybody who retires through TRS does get like a service audit at the end of their career. So So I mean, those things will probably be corrected at the end of their, and then some of it won't matter. You know, like if you provide like the payroll records at the end of their career and they truly were over 140 hours every month, and maybe it won't need to be corrected. But just if you go by this rule and say like full-time for TRS is anybody that's your full-time contracted teachers, you know, like your certified staff, you know. Part-time, a lot of schools won't even have anybody that should be reported to TRS as part-time. Because these are people that are like, if you have like a school nurse that comes, they get a set amount and they're in their contract, it says they're like 0.25 FTE. And it doesn't really matter how many hours they spend at your school because they're going to get that set amount every time. So that's a part-time person. They have a part-time contract. But everybody else that's paid just by the hour, that should be hourly. And then obviously those stipends that I was talking about, hopefully you won't have to worry about it because it's usually like a full-time person. But if you have part-time people or hourly people that are receiving a stipend, then that's when you need to do that calculation and include those hours and that stipend in their wages. So, but yes, to answer your question, you should definitely start reporting it correctly and now. I mean, the best even if it hasn't been in the past. I mean, the best we can do is start reporting it now correctly. Yeah. So, this is important too. Some schools still, like in your payroll software, like one day, it's like they'll pay their subs like daily rates. That's fine, but when you upload it into TRS, make sure that it doesn't say 1 hour. It has to say, TRS considers a full day 7 hours, but you can do it however you want to at your school. It could be 7.5 or 8 hours, but make sure that those like half days are being reported as either 3.5 hours or 4 hours, you know, instead of 0.5 hours. So, because really what you're doing, if you do it that way, is you're shorting that person service credit. Now, some of those like substitutes are probably not even going to retire, but you know, they might be a substitute for a few years, move to another school and start teaching full-time or become like a full-time para. And then they are a TRS member and then they got shorted service credit kind of at the beginning of their career by your school or whatever, you know. So hopefully that's not happening, but let me know if you have any questions about that. But definitely make sure that if you do pay people by the day, the substitutes, that's being converted into hours once you upload into TRS. We already talked about this a little bit, but pay attention to your overages and shortages in your TRS monthly reports, and don't let them carry over from month to month to month. This is a big one I get tons of questions about every year. This time of year, because a lot of schools pay out their sick and vacation leave, accumulated sick and vacation leave. That is not reportable to TRS. Accumulated sick and vacation leave payouts are not reportable to TRS unless it's a TRS working retiree. So if someone's retired through TRS and they're working at your school and then you're paying out their, then it is reportable. But everyone else that's just leaving your district, or that you pay out at the end of the year just because that's your policy to do that, that's not reportable to TRS. The time that it does come into play and can be, I mean it's still not reportable as wages, but is when you do that term pay calculator. If somebody is retiring through TRS, then the sick and vacation payouts will go into that term pay calculator. So again, I mean, I'll stress this again, we already talked about it a little bit, but if you employ any TRS retirees in any positions reportable to TRS, make sure you're following all requirements. if we'll look at the website here in a second, but yeah, that they're all of our fact sheets are very helpful, and you should at least look there first if you have questions like, hey, what about this working retiree? Maybe your question is likely answered in the working retiree fact sheet, you know. So, but if you have questions about, you know, specific to a specific TRS working retiree, then you'd want to contact Natalie Chamberlain. Has always been the expert. She is retiring very soon. But anybody in our TRS retired payroll unit. So. Just keep an eye out for any fiscal year end. You know, I mean, obviously we always try to send a couple communications here at the end of the fiscal year about, hey, don't forget, you know, all of your fiscal year 2026 reports are due by July 15th, things like that. But we also will be sending one out in July that basically it's going to say, here are the total wages that you reported to TRS in 2026. What you're going to want to do is check your payroll software and make sure that those two things jive. And if they don't, then you might want to start doing some reconciliation and make sure that everything was reported correctly. So it's just kind of a new thing that we're doing, because we have had schools that are like, in August, you know, and they're like, oh my God, we missed an entire payroll that we didn't report to TRS last fiscal year, you know. So, how that happens, I don't know, but definitely it has happened. And so if you get that email and you see like, here's what was reported, you know, obviously you might want to just do a quick check against your payroll software. And if you think there are errors, then call me. We also have an auditor, Chris Fish, in our office. She started about 3 years ago, and she does mainly employer audits. And some of you may have been through some of those audits, but if you haven't, then just keep that in mind that you know you could be audited by TRS. It's not super painful or anything. We just want to do the best we can to make sure that you know, everything is being reported correctly to TRS. Obviously, these members always keep in mind that these people, you know, they work their entire lives. They don't even really look at their retirement, don't mess with it. They just think and know that it's there. So if it comes to, you know, they finally get their 30 years in, they go to retire, and they find that things have not been reported correctly or things are all screwed up, then that's very painful and frustrating for that person. So we do the best we can. We know you do the best you can. And part of that is to, you know, for our TRS auditor to take a look. So this is one that I'm really big on. If you are not doing ACH payments, I highly, highly recommend it. It is safer, it is easier, it's cheaper. You don't have to buy books of checks anymore, and it's just much more reliable. All you have to do is fill out Form 140. It takes probably 30 seconds to fill it out, and you can scan that in and email it to me, or you can send it by snail mail. But I highly, highly recommend that, and everyone that is still writing checks switch to ACH. We do have a new, and we'll show that to you here in a sec. How are we doing on time? Yeah, we're good. We do have a new, like, employer frequently asked questions on our website, and it can be found under employers, like the employers tab, under training resources, and there's just a whole bunch of questions that I get all the time. I've been doing this for 12 years now, and so I know a lot of the regular questions that we get and the answers to those questions. So if you have a question, you know, certainly you could peek through that. It's probably 15 or 20 questions that are, you know, very frequently asked. So, and that's relatively new to our website. One of the other really big new things for TRS purposes that you might hear about as employers is that for members to log in to TRS now, they go through ID.me, which is, you know, the Social Security Administration uses it also, so a lot of people may even already have an ID.me wallet or account, but it just increased security for TRS members. We did that in hopes of allowing people to, you know, like withdraw from the system without having a notarization. Hopefully, like TRS retirees will be able to log in and just update their address. We do get a lot of people that live in Montana for the summer and live in Arizona for the winter, you know, so so their address, you know, where their benefit payment is going is changing, and we hope to be able to allow them to update their address, but it does need to be secure so that there's no fraud taking place. So, go ahead.
Is that just for member logins or for us too?
It's just for member login right now. Yeah, employer login is still the same. Yeah, okay. For now. And I haven't heard anything about employer login changing to ID.me, but that doesn't mean it's out of the realm of possibility. It's just not. It's not like right on the real soon up and coming agenda or anything.
ID.me is it suspended me, and it's like taking an act of God to get back into access. So yeah.
Interesting. Well, we've had about, I don't know, we probably went live with it, what, 6 weeks ago ish? Probably 6 weeks ago, and we had about 1,000 or 1,400, something like that, new login or, you know, logins. And obviously we've received some calls, but we've, you know, definitely haven't even received, maybe 5% of that number we've received calls on, you know, so people are getting through it fairly easily. If you guys, you know, obviously our IT department will handle those phone calls, so if you're getting any flack for it, then obviously transfer those to TRS, you know, so. We hope that it'll be a really good, smooth transition, and that we can do some things that, you know, like maybe online retirement applications versus having people fill out a big retirement packet, so stuff like that. But we did need increased security in order to get there, so yeah. That's it.